Bore da, can you tell me your name and where you live, please?
I am Victoria Chism and I live in Devil's Bridge, Pontefranctach, in a farmhouse called Tinkling Farmhouse.
And how long have you lived in the farmhouse?
I think we moved here, well, we renovated it, so we're kind of living here and renovating it at the same time. Probably about 16 years now, but we were living on the same sort of estate, but we were just living in a smaller bungalow until we moved into the farmhouse.
So you've lived in Devil's Bridge all your life?
Yep, born in Aberystwyth.
Good hospital?
I was, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Starting your life in Devil's Bridge, probably one of the most famous communities and villages, definitely, in the Cambrian Mountains.
Yeah.
What do you remember from childhood?
I just remember having so much space to play and explore. So it was a different kind of childhood to, I guess, what some people might have had, where they could just go and knock on their neighbour's door and go and play football or whatever. We had to sort of entertain ourselves and go and climb trees or build dens out of bracken and paddle in the river. So I had two sisters, or I have two sisters, so I did have company, but just vastness and just the freedom.
So you've named yourself as Victoria Chism. Chism not being a recognisable Welsh name.
No.
So you're originally a
Davis. Yeah.
So parents were Davis.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your parents.
My dad's dad was a sheep. I think he used to buy the sheep and then sell them on. So we had farming in our family, and they kind of came from the Llanidloes area, and then my dad's dad bought a place, or had a place, in Capelbanga, and that's where he met my mum, who had moved from Nottingham. She was living in Capelbanga, and that's how they met when they were, I think, quite young, really.
So how much have you learnt about their early life in this part of Wales?
Well, my mum's parents had a guest house, and grandma was a corseteer, and my grandpa used to sell John Player's cigarettes, but he sadly did die of lung cancer. So that's quite sad. So but my mum loved horses, and my dad had horses. And Dad used to see, my mum had very long ginger hair, deep ginger hair, and caught my dad's eye.
So you're here, we're here today now in Tinllwyn, yes?
Yeah.
Tinllwyn Farm.
Yeah.
Which is in the middle of a classic Cambrian Mountains landscape. You've got trees, you've got valleys, you've got hills, but also we're in the middle of a caravan and camping site. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about the caravan and camping site you have here?
So my dad's dad bought the woodlands from the Morgan family. There wasn't much here. There was an established farm, and this house was a working farm with a tenant in it. And there might have been a couple of caravans, but there was an established tea rooms at the entrance to the park, or what is now the park. And when my dad was about 18, he would come up and stay in this house and help manage the farm up here. But by the time my dad was 21, his dad had passed away. So he was told to sell the woodlands, or Tinllwyn, and he said, no, I'm going to find the money to pay off the inheritance tax. And I think that's probably where the caravan park started becoming established, because he could see that tourism was becoming a thing in this area. People wanted There was already caravan parks established in both, and I think people were starting to come here thinking, well, I want to be in the Cambrian mountains instead of at the seaside, and I think it just naturally happened. It was a good location to have a caravan park, and then obviously as Mum and Dad got married, they established a business based around.
Which year did your mum and dad get married?
60. So my sister was born in 69, so around 67, 68 I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Don't know. But they lived in a caravan when they set up the business.
Did they?
It wasn't an instant success. They had to work very hard.
The caravan was on site as well?
It was, so where the tea rooms are, it was a twin caravan in the car park.
And your parents are still alive?
Yeah, both of them alive. Yeah.
Where are they living now?
So literally from the caravan they built their own house and they moved into it, and that's still the same house that they live in on the park.
So you got yourselves and your mum and dad still living on the park.
Yeah.
You married and met somebody?
Yeah, so I went to university, and that's where I met my husband, who is Irish. We instantly got on, and then we went backpacking, did the usual. I came back here to work for Mum and Dad, and he followed about 6 months later and said, I've got a question to ask you.
Right, we leave it there. We'll get the answer to that question, I'm sure, in a few moments. Let's take you back to your childhood, if we can.
Okay.
Which primary school did you go to? I
went to Ysgol Sir John Rees. So I'm not sure if I should have gone to Ysgol Mynach, because it's the one in Devil's Bridge, but in those days Devil's Bridge School still had the toilets outside, and they didn't have a hall, so my mum decided to take me over to Pontarrywyd. So there was the school hall there, and then the inside toilets. It was a newer building.
Did you and your sisters go to the same school?
Yeah, we all went to Pontarrywyd School.
Was that an easy process of going to a school outside your natural community?
By then I hadn't met anyone in Devil's Bridge anyway, so like I was saying earlier, we didn't have neighbours to call on. I didn't know anyone preschool anyway, so it was just normal to go to wherever my parents took me.
So what was life like in Ysgol Sir John Rees in Pontarrywyd in those early years? What do you remember from Ysgol Sir John Rees? Singing
around the piano in Iesu Tyrion, and Christmas plays. I can remember it was a bilingual school, so probably more English spoken perhaps than Ysgol Mynach. Whereas so in the 70s, the teachers would obviously speak in Welsh, but then they would repeat everything in English. So I think that's probably where I got a bit lazy and didn't learn how to speak Welsh fluently, because I knew that the English would be following.
Wyt ti'n siarad Cymraeg?
No, well, tamer bach, but no, not really. Well,
incredible, isn't it? Because you've gone.
Dwi'n deall.
Ti'n deall?
Yeah.
On
a lot.
Thank you for that. I will remember that for future reference. Yeah. Be careful what I say.
Pa'n siarad yn Cymraeg. That's me.
But do you think that you might have lost out?
Totally. I really regret not being able to speak Welsh, and I have tried and tried, but I think the way. Okay, so when we had school concerts or Eisteddfods, we were given a poem to learn, and it was never ever translated for me. So I would literally learn 3 or 4 verses by sound, and I never knew what I was saying ever. And it was.
Can you remember any of those verses? You didn't mention Iesu Tyrion there for a moment, didn't you?
Iesu Tyrion, and
can you remember something in Welsh that you
Lan y Môr? We sang that a lot.
Even though you're in the mountains.
Yeah. My mind's gone blank
That's
now,
okay,
but
that's
yes,
okay.
we did do all the...
Who were your friends in the school, Sir John Trees, Ponterwyd?
There was only one girl my age in my year, Victoria Evans. She still lives in Aberystwyth. She's a nurse there, and occasionally our paths we meet up, but for some reason we're just too busy, I guess. But and then I had Emyr Thomas, who still lives at Steddfod Gwyrig, and then there was another boy called Jason, and he's moved away from the area now. But that's it in my year.
Yeah. Who were the teachers? Which teachers do you remember?
We had Miss Morgan, who was beautiful, and she used to teach us embroidery and music and lots of sort of the cultural side of things. And then there was Dick Evans, who taught us the maths, and I don't ever remember having specific geography lessons or anything. It was very kind of informal, I think. I still can't do my times tables because he used to scare us. In those days, if you didn't know your times tables, you got a whack on the hand with a ruler. So it was quite behind, perhaps, I don't know. So now if somebody asks me 6 sevens, I freeze, because we used to have to stand up, answer, and then sit down, and I could never do it.
No.
So I don't like that.
I think it's 42, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think it is. I'll have to have a look at my knuckles as well, just in case.
I don't know. Don't test me.
Were they happy days in a school, Ponterwyd?
Yes.
What?
I mean, it was just a small school, probably 20 pupils. We used to do a lot of gymnastics. We used to do music lessons. We used to have singing. We used to go out running. Dick Evans was a very keen runner, so he used to bundle the older children into the back of his car and take us off up to Nantamore and make us go running. And we'd often come home late for pick-up time, and the parents were waiting, and where have you been? And he'd be like, oh, I was lost track of time. But yeah, it was nice. I mean, we had homemade netball goalposts. I can remember, to practice the high jump, we had 2 measuring sticks, and we had an elastic band that my mum made, just across, and we got some old mattresses from some caravans that we had, and we used to have to do the high jump onto these mattresses. There wasn't much money to spend for the school, but we certainly did, considering how small it was, we did well in competitions, the Aberystwyth and Ceredigion athletics and so on.
Can you tell me who Sir John Trees was?
I could tell you where the statue of his bust is in the school, but no, I don't know, actually. Was he a Member of Parliament? Was he an MP for Ponterwyd, in that area?
That's all right, yeah.
I think he was a Member of Parliament.
Okay. We'll stick with that one.
Yeah.
You're famous for your Member of Parliament, say, in Ponterwyd, of course. Yes?
Well, we had
Sir Geraint?
Sir Garrett Howells, yeah.
Was he Sir Geraint Howells in the end?
Yeah, wasn't he?
I think we've just elevated him to knighthood status, but yeah.
Oh, maybe he wasn't Sir.
But he was from Ponterwyd. He was a Member of Parliament.
I'm just thinking of Sir as in Sir John Rees, aren't I? Yeah.
So do you remember which year you left school, Sir John Trees?
1980, probably.
And then from there you went to...
81, yeah. Went to Penglais in Aberystwyth. So I think following on the fact that there was the Welsh school in Penwethig, or there was the English school Penglais, based on my lack of ability to speak the Welsh fluently, I went to Penglais, but my big sister went there too. And my friend Victoria also went to Penglais. So it was kind of the natural thing you did.
And as sisters, did you all go to Penglais?
Yeah.
In Aberystwyth?
Yeah. But I only lasted 2 years there. And then, so having already lived in this area and not being able to do athletics or any clubs after school because the school was too small, when I moved to Penglais, I had to catch the school bus at 3:15 back home, which meant I was still missing out on going to netball club or gymnastics or anything after school, because if I didn't catch the school bus, my parents were too busy to pick me up from town. So after 2 years, my big sister went to school in Oswestry, the boarding school, and then I followed the year after. So purely just we used to be on the school bus for 2 hours a day, and then we missed out on quite a lot of activities. So basically that was the thinking behind us going to boarding school, so we could do whatever, just excel in things outside of school.
So Oswestry boarding school, was that the name of the school?
Morton Hall.
Morton Hall.
Yeah, all girls.
Sorry?
All girls.
Good heavens, right, we've
Yes.
got a story here. You've gone from a 20 pupil primary school in Ponderwyd to
over 1,000 in Penglais.
So over 1,000 in Penglais, and then a big shift then from there to a girls only boarding school in Oswestry. What was it like going from Penglais to Oswestry to Morton Hall?
Took me a couple of months probably to not be homesick. And there was no mobile phones. If we wanted to phone home, there were 2 telephones that we could use, and we had to queue up to use them. But to be honest, I was so busy at school because I just jumped on anything that I could do. I was anything, tap dancing even.
You feel you got the opportunities you craved,
Yeah,
to some extent.
totally, yeah.
So tell me about some of the opportunities that the school gave you that clearly otherwise you would never have had it possibly at Penglais because of your family circumstances and the having to leave school to get back home.
I competed in Birmingham doing the hurdles I represented Shropshire, so the athletics championships. That was extraordinary because we still had big blue baggy pants and Airtex shirts, and I turned up at Birmingham to compete in the hurdles, and everyone else had a trainer with them and they were having their legs massaged and they had lycra all-in-one suits on. So yeah, I was still behind the times. I didn't do very well, but I had the opportunity, and it was, yeah.
Any other activities you got in Oswestry?
I went to Sandhurst to the army. I don't know, it's not barracks, is it? The officers' mess thing. So I went there for a weekend because I was interested in joining the army, but after being there I enjoyed it, but I decided it wasn't for me.
So you did your O-levels?
Did my GCSEs. I was the first year to do GCSEs.
Right,
did
so
those
you've
there.
so that's...
And I could do textiles and I could do fashion design and things like that, which I wouldn't have been able to do in Penglais. We were in the orchestra. We had, like I say, we had great stage productions as well.
Were you
we
part
did
of
Bugsy
some
Malone,
of these?
yeah.
Bugsy Malone?
I wasn't Bugsy, no. I can't sing.
Do you remember any teachers that made an impact on?
Oh, Mr. Hunter. He was my maths teacher. So he was from the army, and he was teaching maths, and he pushed and pushed and pushed, and I got my maths GCSE, and I'm really, really grateful to him for pushing me to get my maths because it's so important. and I really wanted to go on and do go to university and do A levels, and he kept saying, you can do it, but I'd never had a teacher that told me I could do anything like that. So
So you went on to do A levels after GCSEs?
Yeah, I did fine art, history of art, textiles and art. Yeah.
And successful?
Yeah, then I went on to Carmarthen to do a foundation, and from there I went on to Nottingham to do textiles, a degree in textiles.
Do you remember the year you graduated?
93 or 94.
Okay.
Yeah.
And going through university in Carmarthen first, then Nottingham.
Yeah.
Were you starting to think about future career? What were you thinking?
I would love to have had a future in art or design, but I didn't know anyone in that industry, so I did really well. I won an award for car upholstery, and I've got that was a Royal Society of Arts award. I also won, after my university degree, I bought myself a loom, and I entered the Welsh Fashion Design Awards, and I was a finalist in that. That was amazing. But then I went backpacking, and that was on the agenda anyway. And then I came back and just started working here. And so I don't know, the doors all closed. I didn't have any contacts. Yeah. And I would like to have done, I tried, I went down to London, and I did go for a couple of job interviews, but I think I was just a fish out of water. I didn't know the right things to say. I wasn't wearing the right things. I was told once I looked like a social worker by one interviewee, which was a bit off-putting. So the next time I went in a short black mini skirt, and that was wrong too. So, I just, no.
Do I sense a little bit of frustration here today?
Yeah.
Because they say it's never too late, is it?
I think it is for me. Well, do you know what? I've got my own art room at home, and I sew and I make things, and I do it for my own pleasure now. So,
I've known you a few years, and you've always come across as being happy, thankful, often energetic, but clearly I've discovered something, and we've discovered something about the creative side of your character, and you have shown me your little studio art room there, which is it's full on, really, wall to wall, and I'm glad you still have this ambition or this interest in the arts, because it's clearly ingrained in you from an early age, I suppose.
When I was younger, primary school age, obviously there was no shops in Aberystwyth where you could go and buy glitter and things like you can now. You've got hobby craft shops, haven't you? So I used to I had a drawer in my dressing table that was purely full of the tin foil that I'd saved off my Easter eggs. I used to unravel them very carefully and then flatten them all out. If we had nice buttons that came off old clothes, ribbon that came on a parcel, anything, I used to save up and keep in my drawer, and then on a rainy day I'd create something.
Are you still creating some things?
Yeah, so the last thing I made, I forget to water my plants, so the last thing I made this winter was a material plant. So I've machine embroidered each leaf individually with some lace on it, or different types of threads, buttons and so on, and so that's in the kitchen now. So I don't have to water that one.
I'll tell you, you should be proud of what you've achieved so far and where you've arrived. But you came then from university, from Nottingham, back to Devil's Bridge.
Yeah. Moved in with mum and dad, which didn't work because by then I'd already moved away to Nottingham, came back. So they had built my auntie a 2-bedroom bungalow on the premises here, which she never moved into. So I said, can I move into that bungalow please, because you're driving me insane. So that's what I ended up living there. So, yeah.
Do you think you were driving them insane, or was it
the phone calls? Yeah. They were probably glad to get rid of me. Dad was always say, get off the phone. You know, it was a business phone line. They were taking bookings and camping, you know, and I was on the phone 2 hours every night to my friends because I was back to being in the middle of nowhere again.
Tell me which friends were you, without naming anybody, which friends were you on the phone to back then? Because phone calls were what we had.
Yeah, so just old school friends. Yeah.
And were they school friends who still lived in the area, or
these
some
are
of them
my Morton Hall school friends.
Ah, right.
Yeah. And I still keep in touch with them, and we still meet up, and we laugh the whole weekends when we meet up. We're still very close. You at boarding school, you create such a bond with your friends that you know everything about them, and these 1980s crazy, 1990s even as well, just all the hairstyles and the clothes and the makeup they used to wear.
So what, in just quickly going back to Morton Hall, therefore, which pop groups, which fashion icons, which styles were you into back then?
There was Wham, obviously, George Michael, and then there was Aha. Do you remember Morton? He was nice, but it was all of the Athena posters. It was everything. It was we only had a little area to put our own posters up, and if you encroached onto when I moved to Morton Hall, there were 12 of us in one room, and you literally had a little bed and a bedside locker, and then another bed and a bedside locker. So the space above your headboard was your poster space, and you if you encroached onto your friend's side, then you know she had to take your poster down.
Which posters did you have up? Do you remember some of them?
I used to collect. I used to like, which is probably wrong, but there's advertising for you, was the black and white Marlborough Lights magazine photos. There was some sort of good-looking cowboy with his top off, so. But they were nicely done.
Talking about good-looking boys and their tops off, when did you meet your husband? Your husband,
My
yes.
husband lived next door but one to me on Sedgley Avenue in Nottingham. So because I'd been to boarding school and I'd already been to Carmarthen, when I went to university, I didn't want to go into halls of residence because I thought, well, I've done that twice already. I don't need to go back and live with a whole noisy bunch of people.
You wanted your wall space, didn't you?
Yeah, I wanted my whole bedroom so I could have posters everywhere. So I moved into just a terraced street, and Alfie, my husband, lived next door but one, but there were 3 or 4 student houses all in a row. And that was, we just all used to go to the pub. We'd all knock on each other's doors and say, "Are you coming out? We're going up to the pub."
Do you remember the pub?
The Fox in Sedgley. Yeah.
And do you remember the first time you met Alfie?
Yeah. So I clocked him straight away as soon as I moved in, but he was in his second year. And he was the only one of us who had a car, and it was the most clapped out old Polo. And I can remember sitting on my little wall outside my terraced house, and he was underneath his car. And at that point, I didn't know he was Irish. I'd just seen him, and I thought, well, I'll go and see what's going on out there. And he popped up from under his car, and he'd been repairing it. And he said, I said, "Are you at the parley?" I was like, "No, I'm not on the pull." And I was so shocked at what he'd said, that, "Are you on the pull?" Because I thought he must have thought I was staring at him. So I went into my house and slammed the door. And a while later, a few days later, I realised that he was Irish. And then he said later on, when we were talking, and I could eventually understand what he was saying, he said, "I asked you, are you at the Poly, as in the Polytechnic?" And I thought he said, "Are you on the pull?" I thought, how rude.
So how did you develop your relationship, your friendship possibly as well?
We were all just friends. We were all good friends until I think probably I was in my second term. I think he knew I liked him and I knew he liked me, but we didn't want to, I wasn't at uni to just get a boyfriend. So, but my friend lived on the other side of the city, and I had a racer bike, and I used to ride my bike all around. No helmet, kamikaze style, just roundabout, so just didn't care about the traffic. And but I did get hit by a car coming back from my friend's house once, and my front wheel was all buckled, and I had a really bad ankle, so I had to drag my bike all the way. It's probably nearly 3 miles, because she was the other side of town. Got home, and I had a little quarter bottle of whiskey. So I had some whiskey, and then Alfie called round and for a cup of tea, as we all did. And he said, I told him what had happened, and he said, "I'll be back in a minute." And he came back with another small bottle of whiskey. And then we had probably too much whiskey, and then we ended up kissing.
I thought he was going to bring a new wheel for you.
No, my bike, that was, I can't remember. I did get a new wheel, but yeah, no, he didn't fix that for me.
So you mentioned he was a year above you.
Yeah, because I'd gone to Art Foundation, and he didn't have to. He was in printing. So he came over from Ireland at 18 and he's not been back, so he's been in Wales now longer than he was in Ireland.
So he graduated before you?
Yes, yeah, before me.
Where did he go after graduating?
So he did a sandwich course, which means that you get work experience for one of the years. And he just went back there. He got a job straight away and worked in Derby. Yeah.
Then you graduated.
Then I graduated.
And came home.
Mum and Dad needed help. Or they said, so both my sisters were married by then and were living obviously with their husbands. Mum and Dad said, "You come home, we need some help. We can't run the caravan park and the farm by ourselves." So I did that, which I thought, well, I owed them because they've just, helped me through university. And I thought I could be a designer and still work for Mum and Dad, which I did do for a few years. And then when I saved up some money, Alfie and I, we were still friends. We went backpacking around Thailand and Indonesia, Australia. But then I left. I only did 6 months because I had to come back for another summer to help Mum and Dad. But Alfie stayed out there for a whole year. And he got a job. He was printing out there. He was doing really well. So I worked for Mum and Dad again, and then
more conversations over the phone to the other side.
Faxes. What? We used to fax each other.
Did you did you keep any of these faxes at all?
Yes.
I had a feeling you were going to say that.
And I used to
Boy,
draw...
I'd love to see your faxes.
Oh gosh. I used to draw, my signature was Victoria Davis, and then underneath it I used to doodle a caterpillar, and in each segment of the caterpillar I'd write hello.
Well, you are artistic, aren't you? So you
autistic, I think.
But it's faxes. That is incredible.
Yeah.
Any letter writing?
Yeah, we used to write letters to each other.
Any phone calls?
So
was that the extreme your parents would?
Yeah, no, not.
Because
we used to have phone calls.
It would be strange times of the day as well.
Not when he was in Australia. I remember after I left Australia, I spent 3 weeks in New Zealand, and we still kept in touch. And I used to tell him what backpacking places I was staying in. I think I had a bit of I don't know how. I can't remember how we used to do that. I guess we used to phone each other in Australia occasionally, and then we just kept in touch.
So you're back here.
I'm back
helping
here.
Mum and Dad with the caravan park and the farm. When does Alfie?
So Alfie came back. He messaged me saying, I've had enough of Australia, I'm going to come back.
How did he message you? Another fax?
I think he did phone.
A phone?
Yeah. He phoned, and I was living in the bungalow by myself by then, and he phoned and said, I'm coming back from Australia and I'm going to go and see my parents, but I want to come see you first, and I've got something special for you, and I want to ask you something. So I thought he was going to ask me to marry him, and he'd been telling me in Australia I think he was in Perth, or was it Darwin, somewhere where they had lots and lots of pearls. I thought, oh, he's going to buy me a pearl ring, come back and ask me to marry him. And he came back. I was so excited because I did miss him, and he was the love of my life. But he bought me a linen shirt, and I said, I hope you like it. I've still got that shirt too. It doesn't fit anymore, but yeah, that's all it was.
So he came back to see you first?
Yeah.
Went to see his parents?
Went to see his parents.
Back to Ireland?
Yeah.
Which part of Ireland?
Omagh, County Tyrone. I think he stayed there for a little while, and then he came back, and then he went back to work in Derby again, and then we just always kept in touch. So
what we're waiting for is, when did he arrive here permanently? What prompted that? Permanent.
He just came to visit a lot. It could have happened, and then I think we decided to make a go of it. But he wanted to get a job first before he moved here, so he did apply for a job at Cambrian Printers, but he didn't get that the first time round, so he still had to go back to Derby, and he used to visit me on the train or in his little polo, and eventually he got a job at Cambrian Printers with the Reeds, and so he got that job, and then we could settle, and he proposed to me then. But
Can you tell me what the proposal was like?
Oh, it's shocking, awful. Bless him. He rushed it a bit because he wanted to ask my parents for permission first. But then he realised that they were going away for a holiday, and he'd had the ring ages. I had no idea. And then I think it was Saturday night. Michael Barrymore was on the telly with his lucky what was it?
Strike
with
It
hot
Lucky.
Strike It Lucky with the hot spots. And I was lying on the sofa, and Alfie came and stood in front of me, and I asked him to move. So he said, "You're in front of the telly, you can move." He said, and he got down on one knee, and I still didn't understand what he was doing. So I was just like trying to look around him, see. And then he started asking me if I'd marry him, and I missed the beginning bit because I didn't realise what he was doing. So anyway, I said yes.
And you've been married now?
24 years next week. So yeah.
And you have children?
2 lovely girls, yes. Francesca and Amy. One of them is now living in Hull. She's a French teacher. And the other one, the younger one's in Falmouth doing photography at university.
And the question I must ask is, which primary school did your children go to?
Ysgolmynach. They had new toilets. Yeah, no, they both went to Ysgolmynach. Yeah.
And then went to Aberystwyth?
Went to Aberystwyth. So Francesca both of them could speak Welsh. So Francesca went to the Welsh school, Penwethig, for 2 years, and then she had to choose her GCSE subjects, and Penglais had a better language department, so she wanted to do French and Spanish, which she couldn't have done in Penwethig. So based on that, she moved to Penglais, and she stayed there throughout up till sixth form. She did, yeah. But Amy stayed in Penglais for 2 years, and then same as me, fed up with the school bus, fed up of, I think she was in a bad year in Penglais. There wasn't anyone, no one that she could just be really good friends with. Francesca had her orchestra, she had some really good friends, she was she had a nice bunch of people in Penglais. Amy didn't meet those people, so she ended up going to boarding school in Brecon. And the reason we chose Brecon instead of Moreton Hall is because in Brecon she could still speak Welsh. So we tried to keep her her cultural Welsh side going.
So we've got one in Hull at the moment.
One in Hull.
Yeah. And the other one?
Falmouth, Cornwall.
Boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
Quite a distance from Devil's Bridge.
Yes.
Pontarfynach.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's 5 hours to Hull and about 6 hours to Falmouth.
So coming back to you and Alfie and being here at the Caravan Park and Farm, Alfie continued working in Cambrian printers?
Yeah. So he used to leave home at 7:30 in the morning, start work at 8, come back about 6 o'clock in the evening. And while he was away, once we had the babies, I would have to get the children up. I'd have to go, by 8 o'clock I was in the camping field with 2 dressed, a baby and a toddler. I would be ticking off registration numbers, and then I'd make sure that everyone was, check the toilets, and then I would take the children to nursery school or primary school. I used to drive Francesca to St Paddens in Aberystwyth for her preschool time. There wasn't much going on in this community for, like a really good play school. We had a smaller school, Faithrin, but it wasn't very well equipped. So that was a school Sir John Rees in the hall. But I think I wanted a bit more for Francesca, where it had a nice outdoor area with little bikes and and she could stay there until after lunch as well. So for me that was good because I was trying to work and build up the business with Mum and Dad.
So what was it like trying to build this business with Mum and Dad, and with a bit of reluctance at the time possibly?
No, I think so when I was living by myself in the bungalow and I'd done 2 seasons here, I had gone backpacking. I had some fun, you know. So I did feel that it was time to knuckle down. And I'd been to those interviews in London and sort of, I think I was a bit wary of trying again, I think. So it's not that I took the easy route, but I could see that Mum and Dad needed me. And they literally said to me, we can't do this anymore. Do you want in, or shall we sell it? So they gave me an ultimatum, really, and I didn't have anyone to discuss it with because both my sisters were married, and I had no, I don't know, I just felt like I owed them it. And then I said I'd think about it.
Did you discuss it with Alfie?
No. I think he might have still been in Australia. I just had to think about it, and I can remember putting some music on, and Jodie Mitchell came on. It's from the album The Big Yellow Taxi. There's a song called what is it? When it's gone. How does it go?
It might come back to you.
Yeah. There's a Jodie Mitchell song, and at the time I just listened to the words. You know, Pave Paradise. Pave Paradise. Oh, it'll come back to me.
It's okay.
Anyway, the words to that song just hit me in the face, and I thought, yeah. You don't always. No, I'm to keep thinking of a different song.
So to get this right, this ultimatum for you to either take over from Mum and Dad or they sell up.
No, not take over.
Right.
Still very much the junior in the business. Still am. Yeah, no. The deal was that they needed help. So I drove the tractor, did the strimming, cleaned the toilets, prepared lunch for them, helped with their ironing, cleaned their windows, booked people in, answered the phone, sighted caravans, cleaned caravans, everything. So I was just just somebody that they could just say, can you go and do this? Can you go and empty the bins? Can you paint the slide? Can you go and put a new light bulb in so and so?
You also at the same time had the Woodlands tea rooms?
No, so the tea rooms are part of the business, but our family, I think my mum's parents ran it for a few years, but it's always been leased out. And there was a petrol station there as well in those days. We used to get the night stop for the rallies. The Welsh rally used to go there, and that we'd be the night stop. So once a year, the whole of our car park was they'd fill up the rally cars, and they'd be all night.
Who was in charge of the petrol station then?
Well, it was part of the shop. So whoever was running the shop. And that's how my younger sister met her husband, because he came with the parents who were running the tea rooms. Mum and Dad leased it to them, and then he came along. And my big sister met somebody whose friend's parents had a caravan on the caravan park. So at least I can say I actually left the Woodlands to go and find a husband. I didn't actually expect them to just arrive here.
Yes, mathematically speaking, I think you would have found somebody through the caravan park.
Eventually, probably.
Do you remember who the supplier of petrol was, yeah? Which company?
I think it might be in Shell. Not 100% sure, actually.
And how long did the service of the petrol last for, and when did it end?
That's a good question.
And why did it end?
Because there was another one in the village as well, in Devil's Bridge. But eventually the one in Ponterwyd was open longer. It was just on the A44. Petrol prices rose. I think it was just the fact that we weren't competitive enough with the prices, and it was just really, there wasn't any reason for it anymore. I think probably cars could just go further, could they? I mean, did the tanks get bigger? You didn't need one in every single village, so.
We've spoken about the petrol station as part of these recordings, about the one in Cwmystwyth. I don't know if you remember the petrol station in Cwmystwyth, but there was a petrol station in Cwmystwyth. Where was the other petrol station in Devil's Bridge?
I think it was by the... well, do you remember where the water tank was, the horse trough? So as you just past Sarah Bunton's chocolate factory, it was there. Yeah, Mr. Griffith's old house, I think. I've seen pictures. So
let's go to the point where you're helping Mum and Dad running the caravan park and the farm. Alfie's working in Cambrian printers.
Yeah.
What was it like with the responsibility of running and doing all this work and these tasks?
Yeah.
You were young.
Yeah. I was young. I used to try and go to the gym or aerobic classes in Aberystwyth just to get off the premises, but just worked a lot. I'd try and squeeze weekends away to go and catch up with friends, but just didn't happen very often. I regret not going. All my friends went to Glastonbury, and I asked Mum and Dad if I could go, and they said no. We've got a group coming in, and we need you to help clean the toilets. But I was such a good girl. I said, all right then. But I do look back and think, gosh, I should have been a bit more of a rebel.
In terms of Alfie then, how long is he still working with Cambrian printers?
No. So he was, obviously we were together, we were living together.
You got married?
We were married.
Right, tell me about the wedding.
Oh, lovely wedding.
Where?
Ysbyty Cambrian. So it's only a mile and a half away. I was still over half an hour late because it's tradition in this area to make a nuisance of yourselves, to try and keep the bride up all night by letting off bangers. Or my sister had a tractor put in the entrance to the caravan park, and all the tyres were slashed so that no one could get out of the premises, so that we had to drag that out the way with the JCB. But for me, they just let off fox bangers all night. But then going to the church, the Aberystwyth farm, they saw my car coming. I was in the car with Dad, and they put a rope across the road, and then you're supposed to hand out some money as a favour or something. Whilst we were doing that, a whole herd of sheep came on the road in front of us, and a muck spreader and some quad bikes, and everyone from Aberystwyth all in front of my car. So we literally just followed a herd of sheep all the way to the church. So we were half an hour late at least.
Do you remember who officiated the service?
It was Mary, I want to say Stoddard, but I don't think it is. Mary. Anyway, I had a female vicar. She was lovely. I think she's a canon now. So.
And honeymoon?
Honeymoon, we went to Rome for a week, and then we went on to Sorrento for a week. So it was absolutely beautiful. In Rome, for obviously we went the night of the wedding, so my hair was still in curls and hairspray, and I remember sitting on the plane being so tired, and there was a nun or a sister sitting next to Alfie and I on the plane, and she was very Irish, and she was chat the whole time, and I remember thinking, oh, please be quiet, I'm so tired, I just want to sleep. Anyway, so this sister, Mary or whoever, was chatting to us on the aeroplane, and lo and behold, we saw her again in Rome with her map, and she recognised us, and my hair was just all skewy and hairspray galore in it.
So let's say quarter of a century of being here at the caravan park and living first at the... Did you live first at the bungalow?
Yeah, so we lived in the bungalow. I had Francesca whilst we were living in the bungalow, and then and Alfie, by this time, obviously you can't live here and expect to have a weekend without doing anything, so Alfie was already then cutting the grass and helping with the sheep, with the shearing, with the dipping, with everything else involved. So he was very much hands-on then with the business, but he was still obviously working his main job in Cambrian printers, and he had to take over from the farm during a lambing year once, because Dad had a heart attack, and he ended up having a quadruple bypass, and that clashed with lambing. So Alfie was literally lambing and trying to hold down a full-time job, and it was quite exhausting. And we had Francesca, and probably had Amy. We had Amy as well by then. And as a thank you, Dad bought Alfie, or had it commissioned, a beautiful settle, which we treasure. And then after that, Dad said, do you want to give up printing and come and work full time with the farm? And I think he took about 3 months to decide, because he obviously he was on a good salary with the printing. I think he's probably on the same salary now as he is with the farm as he was then with the printing. But I don't know, he could see that the printing company that he worked for was a family-run business, and he was never going to be anything other than a manager. And yet, so the thought of actually working for ourselves, being self-employed, we thought, let's go down that route. So, and he was already doing everything anyway, so it made sense.
What have been the significant changes and developments on the caravan park and possibly the farm side over the years?
So the farm, we used to have cattle, but then I think we gave those up about 10-12 years ago, because they were lovely to see in the fields, but they just didn't make sense to keep cattle anymore. It wasn't profitable. So we've got about 1,000 sheep, and Dad and Alfie used to work side by side, but now Dad's pretty much retired, and Alfie's got somebody to come and help him a couple of days a week, but he does it all. And he helps a little bit on the caravan park, but that's where I step in, and I work. My sister, after being an estate agent for a while, she decided to come back to work here once she had children, because obviously being an estate agent with 2 young children, she thought it's better that she could come up here, and Mum looked after her children while she was at work here. So it works really well for a while. And then on my days off, I helped her with her children as well. So in this house here, I've got visions of my sister's children and my children. There's only So we both had them. So we had 4 children within three years. So they're very, very similar in age. So just cooking and painting and water fights and just running around. Because it was really nice environment to bring them up in.
In terms of physically, then on the caravan park side, it's an impressive footprint here in the Cambrian Mountains, on the edge really of the Devil's Bridge village. Describe to us today what your caravan park looks like. What can people expect if they drive in through where that tractor was parked on the day of your wedding, past that location? Once they enter the park, what is there to see and do and experience?
So going back to when my parents established it, everyone just came to their house, and like they did with all camping fields, whatever. You'd book in. You wouldn't have to book in advance necessarily. Some people phoned, but you'd just knock on the main door and say, "Can I stay here?" And as children, I can remember being very much involved, even from the age of 10 or 11, being told by Mum, "Can you go and check them in?" And my big sister and I used to take it in turns, and we'd be watching Blue Peter or something, and then the doorbell would go and it'd be like, "And it's your turn." And you'd have to run and answer the door and book somebody in. And the same with the phone. Eventually, as the business picked up, the phone would ring and people would we'd have to take bookings over the phone. And so we've always had that from as young as I can remember. We've been involved with the business, and eventually Mum and Dad had a conservatory, so we used that as the office. I can remember doing the VAT with her and learning how to do that, and the accounts, and everything was done by hand. And then Mum got one of these. I came back from school once, and Mum had got a computer with the green. It was like the biggest, fattest computer with the green text over. I didn't have a clue how to use that, but eventually it just naturally happened. It progressed, and we updated and
so how are you taking your
office?
Yeah, so you've got an office.
We've got an office now, a reception.
Yeah.
And on top of the office, the year it was built was the year we got married. Alfie and I got married, and on top of the office there's a clock, and it says, if you look carefully, it's got Gareth and Victoria 1999 on it. So that's our little sort of, I don't know why it's got that on it, but
who's Gareth?
Gareth is my husband. So yes, I've been calling him Alfie. That's his nickname. I haven't got 2 husbands. I've got Gareth. Yeah, you asked. Yeah, so that's a Welsh name, and you asked me earlier. So I'm a Davis, and I am now a Chism, but the spelling of Chism is CHISM, because my husband's parents, one was Protestant and one was Catholic, so they didn't want to use Chisholm, like spelt with the HOLM, on the surname because it was too Catholic, I think. So they changed it when they got married, which is why we've got the shortened version of it.
But he is really Gareth.
He's Gareth, yeah.
But he's not.
No, he's my Alfie.
In terms of today, caravans on the park, how many?
Yeah. There's 100 here. So I think Mum and Dad started off with a licence for 50, and then they got another 50, and then the camping came into it as well. I can remember the camping used to be on the little terrace as you come onto the park, and then they got planning for a better, using some of the farmland. So the farm and the caravan park go very much hand in hand, because it's all been established. It was only ever really a farm, and then the caravans, it was just a way of creating an alternative income other than just farming. So, and that's still happening today. Farmers are being encouraged to diversify and put up little shepherd's huts or pods or whatever on their farmland.
You mentioned their license for 50 to start with, then 100. Can you tell me a little bit about the licensing scheme you need to go through, really?
I think it's just planning permission, to be honest. I've never had to be involved with any of that. It's something that was already done before I got involved with the business.
Can you tell me about the pleasures of welcoming and having people coming here, and where do they come from? Why do they come here, and what do they do after they've arrived?
So Dad established the place and he built it with his JCB. So it's very much a sort of it's a personal place because I've seen my dad build it. So I'm proud of it, really proud of it. And I can remember the old little blue and white caravans. They were quite basic caravans, and I can remember the butterflies in my stomach for the school holidays because it meant that there'd be people coming here and I'd have friends to play with. So all my friends, even though I was saying I couldn't go and play with anyone in the village because I didn't have a neighbour, all of a sudden there was an influx of tourists coming, and I had Victoria, Rose, and I had Stephen and Ian and Simon and Leslie and Anne, and all these people would suddenly come from the Midlands to their caravans, and we played football and cricket and we went paddling in the river, and it was fantastic. And I got so excited about them coming for the 6 weeks for the summer holidays, and it was good. Always had somebody to play with then.
So
so from then, obviously, we there's still people on the park now who I played with as a child who have bought caravans because they were here as a child, and they've now bought caravans and their children are using the caravans. So there are 4 generations of some families on this park. So I get the pleasure of saying hello, and they come down. They absolutely love this place, this area.
What do they do? What information do you collect in terms of what do they do when they come here and stay for? Do they stay here long? Do they stay here for a short break?
So there's the people who come here just for a break, change of scenery, but they do their thing. They might go to Aberystwyth for fish and chips. They might go to Clowach Market. They might go to walk along the prom, and they might go to the George Borrow for Sunday lunch, and they've got their little routine, and that's what they do. I think the new customers we get want to go mountain biking, they want to go hiking, they want to be near the seaside and be up in the mountains, and they just want to get away from where they live. So I think there's a new type of caravan owner who sometimes I try and visualise where they live on a busy road in Cannock, for instance, and I have to appreciate where I live, and I have to understand why they want to come here. And then once I know why they want to come here, I can sort of advise them on where they can go for a really nice walk and just get the best views, that kind of thing. So I get a pleasure out of helping them enjoy the area.
What do you recommend?
If people are fit and able, I do say go up to the Havard estate. That's our nearest estate where they can enjoy walks that are signposted. We lend people Ordnance Survey maps, and I might say go if they want to go for a bike ride. I'll sort of suggest a couple of bike routes. But I just try and encourage them to go and explore and not just go to the same places, but to perhaps go to Coast Caron and see a bit of the countryside, as opposed to just going shopping in Aberystwyth.
What about local heritage? We haven't mentioned it yet, but you you have probably one of the most famous legends here in Devil's Bridge with the three bridges and the story of the devil. Can you tell us a little bit about the story of the bridges and then possibly about your waterfalls?
Yeah, so in this village there are three bridges built one on top of the other. The first one was built in the 11th century, probably by the monks that lived up at Strata Florida Abbey. They would have probably been the only ones educated enough to figure out how to build a bridge over the deep gorge, over the Mynach River. But the legend is that the devil built it. So I've got my theories on where this legend came from. Basically, it's based around an old woman whose cow had wandered across the river, and then it rains, so she can't get her cow back. But the devil turns up and says, "I'll build you a bridge, but I want the first living soul to cross the bridge." So the old lady agrees to that. The next day she turns up, the bridge is there, and he says, "I've built you this bridge, but don't forget, I get the first living soul to cross the bridge." And on that she throws a crust of bread across the bridge, and her dog, her farm dog, crosses the bridge, therefore becoming the first person to cross the bridge, first soul to cross the bridge. So the devil got the dog, and the old lady could cross the bridge to get her cow back. The family who ran the estate, the Havard estate, which I mentioned about, one of the founders of that was a gentleman called Thomas John, and he used to travel a lot, and he used to travel. I know that he visited Switzerland, and in Switzerland there's a bridge built between Switzerland and Germany where they've got the same legend, but there is a goat involved. So I think he copied that story and brought it back here, or it might have been the other way around, I don't know. But his hunting lodge that he built was built with a Swiss design. So the Havard Arms Hotel, which used to be a hunting lodge, has got that big alpine, like a roof, and I know that he employed Swiss builders to come over here to build that. So I'm thinking that's where the link with the legend is, but that's just me. I'm reading between the lines there. And then the second bridge built on top of the first bridge was built in 1753, I think, something like that. It's a bit wider, and it's got a lovely cast iron balustrade on the side, which I'm trying to get repaired. There's two pieces missing. And then on top of that, again, in 1901, there's a much stronger, wider bridge that's been built. And obviously that was built to contend with the new heavy traffic, the lorries and cars that had been invented by then. But up to then, it had just been horse and carriage. So it's quite unusual to look at it, and I'm quite sort of protective over it. And like I say, I'm doing what I can to keep it looked after. But unfortunately, there's not much money in the kitty with repairs to heritage sites these days. So yeah. But when I was younger, I didn't even know that I didn't even know it was there. My parents went to so the Havard Arms Hotel and the Waterfalls Walk used to be one establishment, one business. We never used to go to the hotel. We had no reason to. And then that was a Trust House Forte hotel, and they went bankrupt or something. Anyway, the properties were split up. My mum and dad went to London to the auction, and came back having put a bid in for the waterfalls. And when I first saw it, I was amazed. I didn't even know it was on my doorstep. But then once Mum and Dad owned it, they did a lot of repairs. The handrails were falling. It was very unsafe. I don't know how it was, ever a business in the first place. But Mum, it's always been a sort of a ticketed or an entrance fee attraction. So Mum and Dad improved it, and eventually I took over from that probably about 20 years ago. I started doing nicer viewing point areas. I tried to market the legend a bit more because I didn't want that to be lost, and I'm trying to make it still a place to visit where people can just enjoy the tranquility without trying to make it too commercial. But so it's just repairing the steps, keeping the tree management under control, that sort of thing. But still, I don't know, I mean, if you go down there today, you'll see the same landscape that you would have done thousands and thousands of years ago. So
what are the highlights of the waterfall? Because you've got two, haven't you? Can you describe the punch bowl area first, possibly, and then the main waterfall walk?
So going back to even before the top bridge was built, so in the days where William Turner visited and painted the waterfalls, George Borrow came to visit and wrote about it in his journals. So people have always gone down the waterfalls and been enthralled by its natural beauty. So gradually people would either visit the one side of the gorge or of the bridge or the other. On the one side you've got where the River Mynach has eroded away the rock, and you can see all the layers of the rock, and it's created what's called a punch bowl effect, where you've got big deep pools of water with fast flowing water through it, and it's quite a sight. And then towering above you you've got the three bridges. So that's gradually become an attraction where people can go down steps and take in this view, and there's a couple of pounds to go in and see it. And then if you cross over the road, you'll see there's a nature trail path that leads you right down into the gorge, and then at some point you can see the 300-foot waterfalls and enjoy those views, and then just come back up the other side. And it's, again, that's a challenging walk, but we get maybe about 35,000 people a year doing it. So yeah, it's definitely a thing to do if you're in this area.
With the main waterfall walk, can you pick out a few highlights from that?
Yeah, so you have to get to the bottom of the gorge, you have to descend Jacob's Ladder. So there's 100 steps all in one flight, and that is quite a scary thing to do for some of the tourists. Then on the way back up you've got Robber's Cave, and that was basically there was a cave there, and there were two brothers and a sister who used that cave as a highway. They were highway robbers basically, and they'd go in that cave. I think their names were Plant de Bat, was children of the de Bat family, I don't know. Anyway, they were eventually caught. The two brothers were hung, and the sister was burnt on a stake. Because I mean, you can imagine just travelling around this area in those days. It wouldn't have been very safe to travel by yourself, and crossing that bridge would have been probably the only access to Otherwise, you'd have to go all the way around at Aberystwyth, which on horseback would have taken an extra day. So, it was an excellent place, really, if you wanted to be a highway robber. But the reason they got caught, I think, is because they accidentally murdered somebody, and then the witch hunt was on. The locals decided, enough of this, we've got to find them, and they were found in this cave.
We've got quite a brutal story.
Yeah.
And of course, most recently, in terms of brutality, you've had the TV series Hinterland here as well. Can you tell me how you helped with the TV series Hinterland?
Yeah, so we got approached and said, Paul Bach, the location, whoever, he came up to us and said, we're doing this sort of dark, like, so how would they describe it?
Nordic noir was the description, but it became Cambrian noir eventually as a theme, I'm trying to remember now, the kind of category of detective series, I think.
Yeah. Well, they approached us and said, we'd like to use Devil's Bridge as a location. Can we shoot some scenes down the waterfalls and use, your entrance as a sort of a key point? So they did a couple of series. They did 3 series, and 2 of them was based around Devil's Bridge and a nursing home or an orphanage. They used the hotel in the village for that. But yeah, the old lady from the orphanage was supposedly murdered, and her body was found halfway down, floating in one of the pools in the waterfalls. So I often used to go and watch them filming. It was really interesting. The whole village, the whole community got involved. Lots of locals were extras. I was a policewoman in several of the episodes. My children were in it. They were part of the Sunday school trip that they did from the orphanage, sort of like a flashback. So yeah, it was really good. It's
Alfie?
No, he didn't volunteer.
Too busy, I'd say.
Too busy.
Because I remember the series very, very well, for so many reasons. I think the first episode was Devil's Bridge and the orphanage, or the special school that was here in what is today, of course, the Harvard Hotel. And I still look at the barrier on the top bridge for the spots of red ink. I think her name was Helen Jenkins.
Was it?
Was the head teacher or the principal of this special school here in the series, of course, not in real life.
No.
But I know that the special red ink is still there, depicting the blood of her body, and of course we had the actor Richard Harrington, if I remember, playing DCI Tom Matthias. And I can still see the scenes of the gorge, of the waterfalls, the noise, the darkness. So it must have been.
So seeing the actress floating in the water, I think the wig. I was told that the wig she was wearing, the long grey wig, had been worn by Michelle Pfeiffer in the film Stardust. Is it? Yeah, I think so. But that was she was wearing a dry suit under her dressing gown, and she had to float with her face in the water. And you can't see it, but there was so much health and safety and things. But I think it was the second series or the third series, there was a fight, and somebody got thrown over the top railing of the bridge, and soon after that aired, we were having flowers and roses and put on the bridge and on the viewing point at the bottom of the bridge, where people had obviously taken it to heart, and they were leaving leaving flowers.
I was going to ask what has been the impact of filming Hinterland in Devonsbury, being on the local tourism and possibly your businesses in
I booked in some campers on Monday. They were from Finland and they were here because of Hinterland, having seen that. Yeah, they were very excited.
So what are their plans, or what were their plans?
They'd just seen it on TV and wanted to come and visit the area. I mean, but I don't know why, because, you know, it showed the area to be very derelict and bleak. But we do get campers here because they want to see, they've seen Hinterland.
If you could describe this part of Wales to anybody else in the world, how would you describe this part of Wales, the Cambrian Mountains?
I'd say that we're still in a little bubble. People get shocked at the scenery, but they get shocked at the lack of facilities. You know, they don't understand that there aren't really the buses, that they think because it's a tourist destination that it's going to be very, very sort of busy and built up. But Devil's Bridge itself is still very small little village, considering it's got the waterfalls attraction, it's got 2 caravan parks, it's got the steam train that comes up from Aberystwyth, and a couple of other little businesses in the village. But actually the people who live here, there's not that many of them, so it's quite a strange village, whereas in sometimes probably the tourists outweigh the locals, and a lot of people who come and visit here and they say, oh, I live in a village, but that village has got a taxi rank, it's got 2 or 3 pubs, it's got quite a big primary school in it, so they probably don't even think our village is a village, but obviously to us it is.
The Vale of Rheidol Railway clearly impacts Devil's Bridge significantly during certain times of the year. You benefit from that?
Well, I guess it's sold as, you know, tickets are sold, come and visit Devil's Bridge, and I think, you know, many of the people who come up on the train, when they're in Devil's Bridge, they make the most of their time here, and they either go for a cup of tea and an ice cream, or they'll go and see the 3 bridges, and if they've got time they'll go and see the waterfalls, and it's just a nice day out for them. But it's always been sold like that. Even when British Rail owned the Vale of Rheidol Railway, I think they started promoting it. You could catch a train from Birmingham to Aberystwyth to Devil's Bridge, so you could get tickets. You know, it's always been promoted as a destination to visit.
Any events in the community which you'd like to mention?
Events, community events?
Yeah, any event that comes to this community, annual event maybe.
An annual event. We've got the Red Kite Challenge, which is I think we get a lot of people competing. They do a 10-kilometre race, and I think there's a half marathon, and I think it's they're competing. I don't think it's the finals of the Welsh Championships, but they're competing to get a time so that they can enter the Welsh Championships, I think. But that's been going on for many years now, and that's run by Dick Evans, who used to be the headmaster of Ysgol John Rees, so he's still running. Sadly last year, was it this year, he had a stroke, so he's not himself at the moment, but he did still come up to make sure that the event ran smoothly the best he could. But so there's that. And then the village school, they still have some, From time to time, the village school has been under threat because the numbers of the pupils have been quite low. At the moment, we share a head mistress, Joyce George, who's amazing, and she's somehow managing to run Ysgol Sir John Rees, Pontypridd School, and the school in this village. And for now, all three schools, touch wood, are safe. Because she runs them so efficiently. But the small schools in this area are always under threat of closing down, and they want to build either a super school or send everybody to Aberystwyth schools. And if you think about it, you start school at 4. It's not ideal to be on a school bus or having your parents traipse you so far every day to go to school. It's I think you still need your local village schools to remain open.
In terms of nature and wildlife, what do you have here in Devil's Bridge, Pontarfynach?
Well, this whole area is renowned for having helped save the red kites, the bird of prey is called the red kites. People in this community, I can remember my dad saying that people were put on nest watch, so people wouldn't steal the eggs from the nests. And I think that's going back to the sort of the mid-60s, and then through the 70s and 80s the breeding pairs grew, and now we've got many hundreds of breeding red kite pairs in this area. And it's lovely to see. There's a place up the road called Nantararian where they feed the red kites at 3 o'clock every day, and the visitors love going to see those being fed. You might see about 300 all in one go.
Any other wildlife?
Sheep. Oh, for the sheep, yeah, lots of sheep. Pine martins have been released in the area. We've got badgers in the area. We get lots of swallows arriving this time of year. There's lots of wildlife in the area. I remember as a child though being able to go up to the river nearby. We used to go and play there and paddle and swim, and we used to go fishing there. And you'd always see brown trout in the river, rainbow trout in the river. And I look now and I never see any. But we always used to see them.
Any other little activities you used to do as a child in terms of maybe collecting fruit or nuts or...
Used to go inberry picking, blackberry picking. Used to get into... so in those days my parents would be busy working, and as long as I came home for lunch and came home for tea time, I could literally go out the house and as long as I checked in at lunchtime, my parents knew I was okay. And I can remember my friend Michelle, whose parents ran the camp shop. She was a bit girly and I was a tomboy. And I can remember one day we went for a walk, and we went through the woods down to the Rydal River, and we literally scrambled all the way down. I don't know how she did it. She was wearing a dress of all things. So at the bottom of the Rydal River, there's these big boulders. I don't know if they're Ice Age or whatever, but they're great to play on when you're 9 or 10, and you could jump from one to the other and cross the river. And I can remember we jumped down from the huge boulders. We jumped down from one boulder onto a lower boulder and then jumped all the way across the river. And I can remember my friend not being able to then jump back up onto the big boulder. And the gorge is really, really steep. And I can remember we didn't know what to do. So we climbed up the other side of the gorge, so the Pontarfynach side of the gorge. And we ended up in Cymraidol, and we were just walking along. I'd never been there before. know where we were, and some man saw us and said, "What are you doing here by yourselves?" And we said, "Well, I think we're a bit lost." So he said, "Come back to my house." So we went back to his house, which you'd never do. You would tell your children not to do that, but we did that. We went back to his house anyway. He phoned Mum and Dad, and Mum, obviously I could say I'm from the Woodlands Caravan Park, so he found the number somehow, phoned Mum and Dad, and Mum came to get us, and we had a right telling off. But yeah, we could just go and climb trees and explore.
What about religion?
Religion. So I was christened in Ysbyty Cambrian, which is where I got married, and after that, in primary school years, we used to go to Sunday school, and there is a building just before you get to Pont Erwyd on the right hand side that used to be where we used to go to Sunday school. It's been converted into a bungalow now, but Dyfed Morris Jones used to run this Sunday school, and I think it's probably there that I announced I was going to be an artist when I grew up, because I was the only one who could draw camels, and I can remember having to do the nativity scene, and everyone would give me their piece of paper so I could start them off drawing the camels. And we used to, there used to be an organ there, and I used to remember being fascinated with Dyfed singing at this organ and pumping away with the foot pedal and pulling all the different knobs out to change the key of the songs, and singing different songs that she taught us. So that was nice. But then I got confirmed when I was in boarding school, and then we used to go to church every Christmas morning when the girls were little, from as soon as they were born, every year up until recently. And now they're too old and they say, "Oh, I don't want to go to church on Christmas Day." But we always used to go. We always used to tell them that Christmas, you get presents at Christmas because of Jesus being born and the gifts, and so we try to establish the fact that Christmas isn't all about presents. There's the background to it, the religious side of it. But yeah, one year, a couple of years back, Dad decided he didn't want to go. So Amy said, "Well, if Grandpa's not going, I'm not going." So rather than have tears and tantrums, I let Amy stay with Grandpa, and we came back and they'd had a Baileys and they were dancing away in the kitchen, and I thought, actually, that's quite nice. They've made their own tradition now. So yeah, and then COVID happened, so we didn't go for a couple of years, and sadly we didn't go this year either, because I don't think there was a service in Ysbyty Cambrian. I think it might have been in Cambrian.
We mentioned the Vale of Rheidol Railway there. For many, many years, people had to walk on the road, didn't they, to get to the waterfalls, to get to the heart of the village, I suppose. But you've had changes in the village in terms of developing safer access into the.
I think there was a pavement scheme throughout the whole village. So they did, there's the housing estate in the village, and there wasn't even a pavement from there up to the village school. So there was a campaign to get a safe route for the children to be able to walk to school. So there was a pavement built there, and then there was a lot of traffic, people walking on the road to get from the main part of the village where the steam train station is to the waterfalls and to the hotel. And even the locals, they didn't have a safe route to get to the local pub. So my parents donated a bit of land alongside the road there, so the council could build a safe, pavement for people. I'd like to see further pavements done in the village so that people can walk from our caravan park and the tea rooms down to the waterfalls attraction, but sadly the money's run dry, so we'll have to try and campaign for that one.
So that's a significant change in the village, really, in terms of safety.
Yes.
Because the village has been very popular with tourists over the years.
Yes, yeah, and it's vital that we make it safe. I think it's been designated a 20 miles per hour zone as well. So the trouble is we get a lot of lorries still using this route. We used to get the Hendrick Quarry lorries, we get the timber lorries, we get the recycling lorries, we get the sheep lorries, and a lot of the tourists don't realise that it's not a sort of a quaint little, it's a working road, it's an access point across the bridge there, so it is important to try and keep everyone safe.
You mentioned the booking system for the caravan park. In its early days, people would just call by or sometimes phone. What is the booking system today if people wanted to come and stay in the caravan park here?
So the statics we don't rent out. People buy those and then they pay rent to keep their caravan on the land. The campers can book online. They can use the online website booking system. They can phone us, and they can still call in on spec and just book in. A lot of the Dutch people still do that. They like to roam around and just call in and choose places as and when they want to, but most people book in advance now.
Has modern technology made life a little bit easier in terms of booking and possibly marketing?
Yeah, so we use social media obviously, and we use this year we have set up an online booking system called Camp Manager, so that helps, but no, we still use an old file and write things down as well. We're still a little bit traditional. It's not all computerised yet, and we haven't even got fibre to the village, our part of the village yet, so the Wi-Fi is a little bit hit and miss, so we still try and back everything up.
I often call, as you know, in your reception building, and it's not just you and family members there, you have others who assist.
Yeah, so there came a point where my parents realised that I couldn't just do everything. I mean, it was exhausting. I used to work so many hours and I didn't have any weekends. And I got to the point where I said, I need somebody to be in the camping field so if somebody arrives and I've gone home, they can book people in the evenings. So we had a couple from Birmingham who had their own motorhome, and they used to park up in the camper field, and then sort of any late arrivals they would book them in, because what used to happen is people would arrive maybe 7 o'clock at night, and then I'd have to go from here and go round the tents at 9 o'clock at night, and then still be back in the camping field at 8 o'clock in the morning to make sure that everyone was okay and other people hadn't arrived. So we slowly started getting some site wardens, and then they became my right hand basically. They started helping in the office, and they'd start helping with the grass cutting and so on, and since then now we always try and find a couple that will come and help us during the main season, between March and the end of October when we close.
And just to touch on the waterfall walks, you've had changes and development there over the last, I'd say, 12 months.
Yeah, so we're always looking to improve it. Obviously there's the maintenance of the steps and railings and the literature, but I've tried to enhance it. Over the last 2 years, we've opened a new viewing area for the short walk side, and that was purely based on the fact that not everyone's capable of going up and down steps. Some people bring babies with them with the pushchairs. Some people are in mobility scooters or wheelchairs. Some people have had hip operations, and there was never an easy way to tell those people that, oh, I'm sorry, you can't see the three bridges. So I found there was a sort of disused quarry. It was still part of the land, but it was just scrubland. So we improved that. We put a little tarmac path around it, and we've now got an area where people can sit without going down any steps at all. They can see the three bridges from there. At the moment, I've got some interpretation boards up showing how some old postcards of what the place used to look like, and my next project is to do a timeline. So I'd like people to see how this used to be just sort of a gorge, and then there would have been possibly some wooden bridge, possibly before the monks built the first bridge. I'd like to be able to depict through pictures and words of how Devil's Bridge became established, and how Aberystwyth and the other local areas became a destination for visitors. So alongside information on the area of, for instance, when the arch was built, and the Havard Arms hunting lodge was built, and the Vale of Rydal opening, and the different mines that were in the area, I'd like that to be seen alongside when the castle in Aberystwyth was built, when the bandstand in Aberystwyth was built, and the pier, and link it all up together so that you can see how it's all sort of come together as a destination.
And what about payment to go and see the waterfalls? That's changed recently, hasn't it?
I know, it's gone from £1 to £2. I know.
And the payment process?
Yeah, so up until this winter, the turnstiles, you had to access the walks through a turnstile, and you put a coin in the turnstile, and then the turnstile would rotate, but they were kind of quite very narrow. I think they were put there in the Victorian era, but we've recently changed those to modern turnstiles, so they're a little bit bigger so that people can go through easier, and you can just use your card and tap and pay contactless. You can still use coins, but you can use your debit card as well. So the short walk's only £2 and the long walk's £4.
Do you have anything else you'd like to say today whilst we're listening to you and recording this wonderful little session?
I think I might have come across as I'm only here by fate, which I do believe in, but I have been away. I did get the opportunity to live in Nottingham. I did get a job in Nottingham, so I was working there after my degree, but when I did come back, it felt right. It felt like I missed the mountains, and even if I go away now on holiday, it's just really nice to come home. I feel like I've grown into the place. I think when I was younger, I felt a bit lonely, and I felt like there was a world out there that I was missing out on. But actually, when you go to London and when you go to Manchester, where my big sister lives now, you kind of think, yeah, I'm not really missing out on anything. I'm quite content now to visit places, but I think I'll stay here.
And you mentioned there, thank you for that. You mentioned missing the mountains. Of course, we've got mountains and hills surrounding Devil's Bridge here, and we've got Pimlimon Fawr as well.
Yeah.
I take it you've been to the summit of Pimlimon Fawr?
I went up this March on Mother's Day because this was the first year where both my children were away, and they'd sent me a Mother's Day card. Well, Francesca had. Amy recorded me a song instead. She sang me a song and sent me that on the phone. But I took my Mother's Day card up Pimlimon, and I opened my card up there because I just felt right being up there.
Yeah, can you just tell us about your day up on Pimlimon? What did it entail in terms of your experiences? Was it your first time?
No. Oh gosh, no. Dick Evans used to have his running up there and fell races and so on. Now I've been up there lots and lots of times. But I always used to go from the Eisteddfod Gyrrig way. But recently, I think you probably helped with promoting the access from Nantymoch. What's the name of that farm? Maesnant. So you can go up the stream there, and I do prefer that way. It's because you can turn around and the views that side I think are nicer. You see all the way to Aberystwyth. No, so I went up there. I probably went up about 9 o'clock in the morning. Just I don't know. It's missing my children. It's a nice place to contemplate things. What did I do up there? I opened my card. I listened to some music, and it's the sort of place that you can go. Sometimes there's nobody around for miles, and you can sort of sing and just be yourself up there. No one's watching. Yeah, just enjoy the views and come back down.
Can I ask if you went on your own?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yes. Alfie was seeing to the sheep. There's the farming's every day, isn't it? He'll be doing farming on our wedding anniversary. It's 24/7 here. We both work all the time. But it's not a bad place to work.
Victoria Chism, thank you for your time this morning. It's been a total pleasure. I've listened very closely to what you've said. I've discovered a lot as well, and it's just this kind of work helps me understand people more, get to know them better, and appreciate where they are today and where they've come from as well. So thank you for your time. I hope many people will listen to your life on this file, and that they also understand what living and working is like here in the Cambrian Mountains in Pontryfynach in Devil's Bridge.
Thank you.